Thank you so much for joining us today and for being at the conference. We just love having your spirit, and of course, having your book available to all of our attendees too. And that's kind of what I wanted to start our conversation was kind of, what was the process you went through, to write this book and put all of this out there in print?
Well, first, let me thank you guys for having me here at Foundations and allowing me to be a keynote. It's an unbelievable honor. It really is. High on Arrival was born out of a really failed research expedition of mine during a rather public and very, very breakout in handcuffs type relapse. And I was traveling to New York to do a One Day at a Time reunion on the Rachel Ray Show with Valerie Bertinelli and Bonnie Franklin and Pat Harrington. And it was August 28th, I believe, of 2008, and I was arrested at LAX for felony possession. And didn't make it to New York, obviously, whisked off to rehab. But I was leaving LA to go to New York, and then I was traveling back from New York to meet with a writer to start the process of writing High on Arrival in a relapse. Hello. And obviously that didn't happen, and the book changed as the result of that, and I ended up choosing a different co-writer as the result of that, and I spent months in a facility, and came home to my home with my son and my dogs, and and the whole thing, and began the process of not only rebuilding my recovery and my sobriety, but of excuse me, finally speaking the truth about my journey. And I had sat down to write a version of High on Arrival a decade previously, and I got into it with the writer, the co-writer, and I was only willing to share the sanitized version of my psyche. I was not willing to tell the truth. And my father was still alive. And I thought, this is not the time. And I said, I'm very sorry if I've wasted your time, but I'm tabling this project for now. And so when I did sit down with Hillary Lifton, my co-writer, it was finally time for me to tell the truth, because I knew that I was protecting some pretty monstrous secrets. And I knew that people were going, what is wrong with this woman? She continues to crash and burn, and yet she's been given everything that people fight for on a daily basis with with their claws. And yet she continues to fail at sobriety and at life. And I thought, if I'm ever going to be able to live up to my potential and pass along love and kindness and all these beautiful things to other people, then I had to tell the truth. And I wasn't willing to live the lie anymore. And that's where High on Arrival came from.
I want to come back to the timing, but when you talk about relapse, I think in this country, we have this interesting notion that people in recovery, when they relapse, that's a fault of character.
Yes.
But yet, when the cancer patient relapses.
Yes.
And so if you could, talk about your experience, and I think most of us believe that relapse is part of recovery.
We believe that relapse is part of recovery, but we also, conversely, have to believe that relapse is part of the disease. Because I know, many people, of course, don't get sober the first time they try, or they do manage to attain a certain amount. I had 10 years clean and sober. I went out on pain medication through an elective breast augmentation, ended up having to have the boobs removed anyway, which, brought more pain. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, You're like, well, if I fall down the stairs, someone's going to have to give me some dope, because I wasn't, if addiction is, say, a tumor, I missed a spot. And it became acceptable to me. And it wasn't like, and I'd always been led to believe that if I were to relapse, that I would go from A to Z overnight. I'd do whatever, and then I'd have a needle in my arm by the next day. Sadly, that took years, you know? We talk about pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. Well, I'll tell you, that's what happens. And sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. But I understand that relapse is a part of recovery, but it's also, I think, even in a larger part, a part of the disease, because we don't give our brains the time to heal. We don't give our neurons time to start firing again. And, you know, and then, you know, because if craving is the same place in the brain where hunger is, then we believe, as addicts who aren't in recovery or who are trying to be in recovery, that it's this is survival. If I don't have this, I can't fill in the blank, whatever it is for you. And so we have to figure out a way to get people in and interested and engaged and excited about sobriety, and keep them engaged and interested long enough for that brain healing to begin, so that then they can go, whoa, because I didn't know there was another way to live until I knew there was another way to live. There's a defining moment, and it's different for everybody. That's what's so fascinating about this.
Do you have any notion or any ideas around this thought of, you know, with celebrity and how the 24-hour news cycle loves to focus on the relapse, and then we never come back to talk about the recovery angle? And you've gone through this personally. I mean, how do we attack that in this country?
Well, my good friend Kristen Johnson, my good friend Kristen Johnson said, this great meme that she started. Every time we giggle at a wasted celebrity, and we, you know, the 24-hour news comments and TMZ goes, you know, this person's done that, and isn't it funny? Look at him, he's wasted. He's so effed up. We are as a culture raising the stigma. We're not lowering it. By doing that, we're frightening people, because they think, well, you know, if Lindsay Lohan, Justin Bieber, Mackenzie Phillips, whoever it's going to be, they're laughing at them on this worldwide level. What are the people in my own small circle going to do? And so, you know, it's really detrimental on a world stage, on a countrywide stage, you know. And I think that's changing. It's changing. But it's taking time to change. It's taking time. I mean, look how long it's been. You know, what is it? June 10th is 79 years of the Big Book, right? Things have changed. You know, the stigma that they experienced in the 30s isn't the same as it is today. It just isn't. But then now we have substance abuse. You know, so everything morphs, and we have to morph with it. We have to keep up with the changing times. And, you know, because kids are dying. Dope isn't lonely without me, man. Dope is not lonely without me, because it's finding new victims on a daily basis. Drugs are elemental.
Noah Levine said to us earlier today, in talking about sharing his personal story, and he said, I can, you can. And that really resonated with us, because we think about what we're trying to push with Heroes in Recovery, and trying to remove the stigma to lower the barriers for people to access help somewhere.
That's right.
And earlier in our conversation, you referred to when you finally published your book, you know, timing. Do you feel in this country that we're getting closer to having that time where people in recovery, people suffering with addiction, that it'll be looked at like the Red campaign with AIDS, it'll be looked at Susan G. Come with breast cancer? Are we ever going to get to a place in this country like that?
Of course we're going to get to a place, because we're sitting here right now talking about it. And, you know, media outlets are beginning to talk. I don't know how long I've been talking about the prescription drug epidemic and the heroin epidemic that's killing our children. You know, and finally, you know, God bless him, Phil Hoffman has to die. And then people go, did you know there's a heroin epidemic? I'm like, okay, then let's talk about it. You know, and so I think that the more we talk about it, the more people understand, the more blogs there are, the more social media. I mean, you know, half the people I follow on Twitter and half the people that I am friends with on Facebook, we are cross-posting about addiction and recovery and stigma and the anonymous people and sober high schools. I'm chills while I'm saying this. Sober colleges, speaking at foundations, putting a face on the addict. You know, this is what we look like. We look like your mom. I'm Shane's mom, you know, but I'm also an addict. But but I'm an addict in recovery. So beautiful.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you're doing at Pasadena Recovery that you think that you're most proud of, that you feel is making the most difference in your community?
Well, my work at Pasadena Recovery Center, it's been a lifelong dream for me. You know, I started my KDAC in 2004, I think, and that's before the licensing laws changed in California and everything. Because I said, God, if higher power, whatever, universe, God, whatever, if you don't want me to be an actress, that's cool. Because I have another passion. I'll go to school and become a counselor. And so I was like 3 months in, and my agent calls and says, can you get on a plane to Scotland tomorrow? You're going to do a movie with Adrian Brody and Keira Knightley. And I was like, yeah, of course I'm going to get on a plane. And so I never finished it. But I've always been very passionate about it. And I was never a client at Pasadena Recovery Center. That's where Drew filmed Celebrity Rehab. But I went there to speak. Mike Bloom asked me to come and speak on a panel, not an H&I panel, but like for our speaker series. After this panel, I got a text from him saying, can you have lunch with me and our publicist? I want to talk to you about a business proposition. And I immediately went, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, he's going to offer me a job in recovery. I'm going to be able to work with addicts. Oh my God, 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 oh my God. And so I went to the lunch and he's like, I really love your take on recovery and you know what you're talking about. And I have the incredible honor of running groups with, me and 50 clients twice a week and doing media outreach, the story in People magazine that's out this week. Because I want to chip away at that giant facade that's covering up who we really are. We're your mothers, brothers, sisters, we're your doctors. We're your lawyers, we're in recovery. I can't break anybody else's anonymity, but I'm allowed to break my own,
I think we have this this saying that, anonymity is not secrecy. And I think that that's part of educating that not everybody should share their story. They may not be ready, but for those that are, the platform should be there,
yes.
in the right context. So,
but then if you do share your story at a public level, and then you end up talking about these esoteric 12-step things that we say, and the numbers of the steps and what they say and all that kind of stuff, people get mad at you. You walk into a meeting and they're like, "So how you doing? Saw your thing." You can't do it. At least not in the climate that we're in now. And I don't know that, I did an interview for The Insider, some show or something about recovery, and I said, it's 12-step recovery. It's in church basements all over the world. And I got tweets from people going, what do you mean it's in a church basement? What does that even mean? I have a friend who needs help. Which church basements? Because I couldn't be specific. And there are people, we think, because this is what we do and we live and we breathe this recovery thing, we think, it's in church basements everywhere. We think people go, oh, they must be talking about, that. Some people have no idea what you're talking about. And we just assume that they do, and they don't. It's
this notion of inside baseball.
Yes, yes.
And David Sheff really brought that up in his opening remarks, how, he didn't know where to turn. His pediatrician couldn't even provide help. And so, I think you're absolutely right.
It's very esoteric.
We assume a lot.
It's very esoteric. Yeah. It's almost like, that we're doing some sort of pagan rite somewhere. That's because a lot of people kind of know what it is, but they don't really get it. They think it's a cult. They think we're Jesus freaks. They get all of these notions about what goes on in those rooms. And actually, it's really just one addict sharing with another addict. This is how I get through the day. How do you do it, buddy? Let's have a cup of coffee.
It's almost like we need to figure out how to advertise more open meetings.
Yeah, exactly.
The community.
But then if I'm sitting at an open meeting, I'm like, and they go, are there any non-alcoholics present? I look around and I go, oh, thank God.
I think that's one of the things when we were talking about Heroes in Recovery, we were struggling with, okay, how can we have a conversation with people and not break any of the covenants? And so that was why this idea of the 6K run walk really resonated with us, because we thought, wow, there's a lot of people that aren't going to know what we're talking about. They're going to show up because they may be into fitness or want to do a run walk, and all of a sudden that gives you a chance to kind of start the conversation, which is, I think, a lot of what you're passionate about, what David Sheff talked about. So.
You know, and there are very few taboos left, but when High on Arrival came out and I talked about, you know, on a national level, you know, the most public platform available at that time on the Oprah Winfrey Show, it's the first time I'd ever spoken about it with someone who I didn't, you know and hold close to my heart. It was Oprah Winfrey, right? And yes, it affected me personally. Yes, the backlash was difficult. Yes, I have now of a family of choice instead of my family of origin, because some of my family members just don't want to, they don't, if you don't acknowledge it, it's not there.
Right.
But it opened a national conversation. And so my personal, like, 8 or 9 Phillipses that got all pissed off and worked up and, I'm not going to talk to you, compared to the ripple effect of the tens of thousands of women and men and young boys and young girls that I've heard from who said, yeah, me too. No one's ever spoken about this. You're giving a voice to people who don't have a voice as far as incest and child sexual abuse. It's worth it, because what we're doing right here is helping to open a dialogue about how do we save our kids, how do we show people that there's another way to live. And you can be happily and usefully whole without drugs and alcohol. What a concept.
Mackenzie, what was your thought process around choosing the national stage and choosing arguably the most high-profile person in Oprah Winfrey to interview you?
I didn't choose it. It came in through the publisher. And who doesn't want to appear on Oprah the day that your book hits the stands, And I've always been one of those people, yeah, I'm scared. Yeah, my hands are shaking. But I'm going to face it. I'm going to walk through it and I'm going to do it. Because of course, you want to sell your book, right? But also there's the message in the book that almost takes on more importance. And so, you want to get it out to the most amount of people possible in the most efficient way possible on the largest platform that you have access to. And I just happen to be incredibly lucky, I guess is the word, that it was Oprah Winfrey and that they devoted the entire hour to High on Arrival. But I can't even watch the footage. I cannot, because my hands are shaking and I'm crying and I was terrified and it was horrifying. It was horrifying. It was really scary. I was really scared. And, but just like, we're warriors, man. People in recovery, we are the best friends. We're the hardest workers. We'll run towards danger if we're going to help a comrade get back up on their feet. And I had to face this. And if I had to face it in front of Oprah Winfrey, why not?
Did you travel there alone?
No.
Talk to me about your support team around that time.
My best friends, Marissa and Connie, were with me. They're just two lovely women that I'm very, very close with. And, the night before, we kind of sat around in our pajamas giggling and, wonder what Oprah looks like in her pajamas, trying to humanize it, because it's terrifying. And then, of course, the publisher was there and my book agent was there and, it was a bunch of people. And then, at the end of the Oprah thing, the surprise guest was Valerie Bertinelli. We played Sisters on One Day at a Time. Hello. People come up to me and they go, have you ever thought about the irony that you're... And I'm like, yeah. Yeah, I've noticed that. Anyway, so, I had a great support system, but we did sit in the suite in the hotel the night before giggling, wonder what Oprah's eating right now, because otherwise it's too much to face if you can't laugh about it. Yeah.
Do you have a second book in you?
I am in talks for a second book right now. Different kind of publishing house, totally recovery oriented, more of a spiritual message. Very excited about it. Can't really say much about it right now, but it's certainly not going to be the backlashy who slept with whom and who abused whom and who'd you get high with kind of thing. You know. And the thing being about High on Arrival is that people go, well, you know, I mean, she just told everything. Well, a memoir is you tell your life story. I didn't have to make stuff up. All that stuff really happened. You know, what did they want to read about when I was, you know, in 4th grade and my legs didn't fit under the desk because I have really long legs? Or did they want, you know, want to read about the real struggles that people face? The fact that, you know, I just have like a job that puts me in the public eye. It's the only thing that makes me different from it. It doesn't even make me different from anybody else. It just means that my job is different. You know, Jordan downstairs, he was saying, everyone says you're just so nice and approachable or whatever. And I'm like, I'm just another drunk getting through the next 24. And if I get to do it with a bunch of other like-minded people, not just in the rooms, but on a professional level, oh my gosh, what an honor. What an honor. I'm honored to be here.
I think that, you know, with people in recovery, addicts, they can sniff out somebody who's bullshitting them. And I think that that's why you resonate personally with so many people, because, you know, we can see through the mendacity.
Someone who's just here to just, you know, hand you a bowl of shit. Pardon me. You know, I mean, look, I was driving up here in my car and I was blasting Sirius XM, The Bridge, because I'm into oldies. And I was looking around my car and I'm like, oh, there's the Treasury from the Tuesday Noon. Oh, you can't put this on probably, but look, there's an As Bill Sees It. There's my big book and my 12 and 12. There's the literature, my literature commitment. And here's the format for where I'm a secretary on Thursday after. You know, I mean, we live this thing. We live this thing. And if you get an opportunity to actually be in a controlled setting with 50 or 60 clients, people trying to crawl up out of the dirt, out of the mess that we leave behind in addiction and alcoholism. And you get to be there to say, here, take my hand.
You know, I think
it's beautiful.
I think that there's this comment, you know, you can't have faith without the works.
Faith without works is dead. That's what it is.
And then Noah Levine spoke about Buddhism is action, recovery is action.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the beautiful things about the recovery community is that there is so much action that goes on.
It is, and you know what? We, as addicts and alcoholics before recovery, I mean, sobriety and recovery are, you know, kind of different, but before recovery, there's not much action. You know, there's a lot of, you know, action, thinking, planning, plotting, and then there's a little bit of action. And then you're back sitting and thinking and planning and how do I get it, what do I do? But in recovery, when you're in this thing, there's always something to do. There's never not something to do unless you just don't feel like doing anything. There's always a way to be of service. There's always something to do. You know, when you first get sober, you go, well, crap, how am I going to fill my time? I spent all this energy, you know, finding it, getting it, using it. How am I going to lie to get the money? And then and I tell my clients, I'm like, there's going to be plenty for you to do. You just have to be ready to show up for it. There's a lot of action. It's never boring.
So we're so honored to get connected with you, you know, here at this conference. Is there anything that sticks out in your mind that you may have seen or heard at this conference that you go, wow, I didn't know that, or that's unique, or I'm gonna research more of that?
Rubenstein was fascinating. It was a little dry, but the message was clear about, you know, the breathing and how if you're not breathing properly, and this goes back to what Noah's talking about too, that, you know, you produce more cortisol, which more stress, which, you know, proper breathing can bring you back into balance, which is basically Buddhism. But he's coming at it from a scientific point of view. That was fascinating. Mark Schwartz blew me away with attachment disorders today, and secure attachment, and you know, the studies with mother and child. Heather Marshall knocked my socks off in the adolescent panel. I have, you know, and Tanya Meeks with her ACOA playing her mother and herself. That was absolutely inspiring. I wasn't here for David Sheff. I've heard David speak before. I didn't get here until Monday afternoon. You know, I mean, I'm at the booth with Mike and I'm talking to people and I'm handing out my card. I've never had a business card in my life. until I started working at Pasadena Recovery Center. And then we're going to lectures and we're going to hear speakers, and I love it. I'm tired, but I'm fired up. You know how Dr. Phil says, I want you to get excited about your life. I want you to get excited about your recovery, And man, although a lot of the stuff is a little clinical, but I have had some training and I do work in the field, so it's fascinating to me. If more laymen, non-CBTs, MFTs, whatever, could come here and hear this stuff, it's mind-blowing. Mm-hmm. It's mind-blowing. The science of the mind, how it works on the brain, how your brain heals, where the receptors sit, mm-hmm. how these things work. We don't take time to think about that stuff. We're just like, feel bad, need to feel better, this is how. Mm-hmm. Now I'm better now. But there's so much more behind it, and that's why I come to these things, because I want to get more information. I say to my clients, I'm not going to be here next week on Monday and Thursday, so I'm not going to be doing group, but just know that I'm off on a fact-finding mission so I can bring home more information to you so that we can do this thing together.
Excellent.
Because I say to them, look, guys, I am you and you are me. The only difference is I got my keys in my pocket and I got my credit cards and my car's out front. I've sat where you're sitting more times than I care to tell you. And the only difference is that I'm doing this thing and I'm here to show you how I did it. I love those people. They're my people. Addicts and alcoholics are my people.
I guess we have 3 or 4 heroes in recovery advocates. They're just folks who are sharing their stories that are here mm-hmm. this week. And that's something that we should brainstorm about how we can
I'll tell you something,
out.
It really gives you an entirely different mindset about your active addiction mm-hmm. and about your recovery. Mm-hmm. Because you're hearing experts, and the terms aren't that, that clinical. Mm-hmm. And, you're sitting there with your phone, and if you want to Google hypoxia, it takes 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. then within 30 seconds, when he says hypoxia, 30 seconds later, he's still talking about hypoxia. You have the definition mm-hmm. right in front of you, mm-hmm. and you know that it's not enough oxygen getting to the mm-hmm. brain so that the tissues in your body can perform at optimum. And then, so you have the tool right in your hand, your smartphone. Mm-hmm. So if you think that the terms are too clinical, they're really not. It takes a second to look them up, and then you're right back in, mm-hmm. and you know mm-hmm. what's going on. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful.
Mackenzie, last year we had the pleasure of interviewing Larry Gatlin, and mm-hmm. he had a really, I think, very succinct point looking back at his recovery that said that his quote was that, I used to be Larry Gatlin, mm-hmm. and now I'm just Larry Gatlin. And I wonder what your response to that.
I love that. I think that's beautiful. All my life, my first name is Laura, and my middle name is Mackenzie. And I was always very weird about being Mackenzie, because it was just like Mackenzie Phillips, I'm Laura. So I would introduce myself and say, hi, I'm Laura. And the person I would introduce myself to would go, well, you look a lot like Mackenzie Phillips, so why are you telling me your name is Laura? Or I'd say, hi, I'm Mackenzie, but everybody calls me Laura. Just call me Laura. And then I got into the, hi, I'm Mackenzie Phillips. And now, really, if I think of I have friends who go, you do know you're famous, right? Because I'll be walking down the street and I'll go, hey, Marissa, why is that guy staring at me? What is wrong? And she's like, come on, dummy. I forget, because recovery, like I said, drugs are elemental. Mm. They don't care who they fuck up. Pardon me, sorry. And I am one of many, If we talk about the middle of the herd, I talk to my clients about it all the time. I'm like, stay in the middle of the herd. Those antelope, and they go running off and they're leaping, the gazelles are leaping, and the next thing you know, a lion takes them down. I said, we need to stay in the middle of the herd. I spent most of my life either elated or devastated, and not in a bipolar way, mm-hmm. but just in a, overstimulated. Mm-hmm. It was either everything was fantastic or everything was awful. I knew very little about just being. Mm-hmm. And, I identify myself as Mac now. I'm just Mac. I'm Mac. There comes a time where you could, when they say we got to put away your childhood things, your mm-hmm. childish things. I'm Shane's mom. Mm-hmm. I'm an addict in recovery, and I'm Mac. I get what Larry's saying. But then we are beholden to use this platform that we have to reduce the stigma of our people. So it's a double-edged sword.
I think that's a really great statement and comment, and I think it's something that transcends celebrity. And I remember my parents telling me when I had my first child, they said, well, it won't be long before you'll just be Miles's dad. Yeah. You'll cease to be Lee. You'll be Miles's dad, and I see that every day.
Yeah. Oh, look, Shane's mom.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Shane's 27, so, but still, my corporation is called Shane's mom. I'm Shane's mom. Yeah. There
was another, I think, nice line that Larry Gatlin talked about when at his speech, I shouldn't call it a speech. It was kind of half sharing and half music. It was really powerful. But he said that the cocaine for him, the cocaine was very intoxicating, but the celebrity and the fame was the most intoxicating for him. And I wonder, it sounds like based on what you just shared that there was a little bit of that, obviously, with you too.
There was definitely a little bit of that, but they talk about people who are introverts, but then when they're in public, they're very extroverted. I'm definitely an introverted person with public extrovert qualities, I guess. Look, I could care less about being in People magazine at this point in my life. I could care less about being on The Insider at this point in my life. What I care about is being here talking to people about recovery. What I care about is if this People magazine article helps to reduce the stigma and helps these kids and all of us to find a way to live happily and usefully whole without drugs and alcohol, that is my primary purpose. That is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And if I'm doing a film, doing a little independent film, for me, it's really only so that I can keep doing this work. This is where my heart is.
David Sheff mentioned that when he wrote Beautiful Boy, he was a little bit surprised at the volume of cards, letters, pictures, boxes of mementos that were sent to him, by family members that had not been as fortunate as Nick had been with him. And so I wonder if there's anything, is there any wisdom that you can share with somebody who, either a family member or a person who's struggling, with how to encourage them to come into that light, to seek help somewhere?
We need more positive representations of people in recovery on a mass public level. People are so protective of their truth, that they're addicts in recovery. But my encouragement would be that just never give up, mama, dad, brother, sister, never give up on your addict. As long as there's breath in the body, there is hope. There's always hope. People say, oh, that guy, he's a hopeless addict. Nothing pisses me off more. There is no such thing as a hopeless addict, because I have seen people come back from death, Maybe it's, more of an existential death than an actual death, but just keep at it, keep at it, keep trying. I mean, how do you encourage someone to give up their best friend? How do you encourage someone to leave behind something that is their only coping strategy? By example. Maybe you have to drag them to treatment. Maybe you have to shut the doors. I don't know how I really feel about tough love. I think David Shepp and I are on the same page with tough love, because people die from tough love, and but certainly detaching with love, I don't have a problem with that. The good old Al-Anon, detach with love, but don't give up hope. And the more positive representations we have of what it's like to be in recovery, and how you don't lose your individuality, and you can still be the crazy, silly, fun, wild person. I have more fun now. So I guess the encouragement would have to be more to the person dealing with the addict than the addict themselves, because it's very hard to hear. I mean, I remember, being alone in a room with a needle and a spoon, lots of needles and lots of spoons, and the shades were drawn, and it was very dark, and I was kind of creeping around, and there's midgets in the trees, and all those insane things that happen. And there was something on TV. I don't remember what it was. Maybe it was, I don't know what it was. And it just stopped me. And I was watching, and I was like, that person doesn't do what I'm doing anymore. and they look happy, maybe it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had people come up to me and say, you know, I saw your Lifetime Intimate portrait,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to treatment the next day,
Mm-hmm.
because if you can do it, I can do
Mm-hmm.
it. So we're beholden.
Mm-hmm.
We're beholden to be positive representations of what it's like to be in recovery.
Mm-hmm. John Southworth, who received that morning, the first morning he received a Lifetime Achievement Award, and he's a very well-known interventionist, and he said, as long as they're alive, there's a chance.
Yes, basically,
Mm-hmm.
that's my motto.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know.
Yeah. Well, listen, I really want to just thank you again for spending time with us, and
My
for
pleasure.
and for really blessing us and our conference and all the attendees, with your message and your presence here, and just anything we can do to support the great work you're doing.
Thank you. That means a lot, Lee. Thank you so
Great.
much for your time.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.